The story opens at a mysterious hospital perched near the ocean, where a young girl named Maddie sits with eyes full of fear, staring directly into the camera, knowing she is only moments away from an incredibly dangerous operation. As the camera slowly pulls back, we see something deeply unsettling. Attached to her back is a strange and terrifying infant, separate yet somehow still a part of her. This infant has a brain so unnaturally developed that it can control objects around it without ever touching them, and when angered, it becomes lethal to anyone nearby. Because of this, the doctors made the difficult decision to sedate Maddie and surgically separate that part from her body. But here's the catch. Their brains were deeply intertwined, so a complete separation was simply not possible without risking Maddie's life. So instead, the doctors took a portion of that infant brain and sealed it permanently inside Maddie's own skull. From here, the story jumps forward 20 years. That same girl has grown into a beautiful woman who is now expecting her first child. But she has absolutely no idea that what is about to happen will shake her to her very core. The moment she walks through her front door, she finds her husband watching a boxing match. Without saying a word, she picks up the remote and turns the television off. That small, simple act sends her husband into an explosive rage, and without hesitation, he grabs her and slams her head against the wall, with no idea whatsoever that this single act of violence is about to cost him his life. Maddie suddenly realizes she has a deep gash on her head, and the panic hits her instantly. Ignoring the pain shooting through her skull, she rushes into her room and locks herself inside. When she finally checks the wound, blood is steadily pouring from the back of her head, and her condition is clearly getting worse by the second. But Maddie has no idea that her husband is about to pay dearly for what he just did. As night falls, her husband is dozing off on the couch when a strange noise jolts him awake. He follows the sound into the kitchen and finds the blender running entirely on its own, even though there is not a single soul in the room. Stunned, he reaches out to switch it off, and right at that moment, the refrigerator door swings open behind him completely on its own. Thoroughly shaken and confused about what is happening, his first thought is that Maddie must be trying to scare him somehow. Then suddenly loud noises erupt from the living room, pulling him in that direction immediately. When he gets there, he finds a woman dressed entirely in black sitting on the couch, flipping through television channels at a relentless pace. The instant he reaches for the switch, the woman vanishes completely. He convinces himself his eyes must be playing tricks on him, but the cushion on the couch is still slowly rising back into shape, clear proof that someone was just sitting there. While he is still processing this, the same dark, shadowy figure suddenly materializes directly behind him. Upstairs, Maddie is jolted awake the instant she hears her husband scream. The moment her eyes land on the blood soaking her pillow, she instinctively touches her head and realizes the bleeding has not stopped. Panicking, she rushes downstairs, only to find her husband's neck twisted at an impossible angle, dead in the most mysterious and horrifying way. As her eyes scan the room, she spots the same dark, shadowy figure sitting nearby, its hair wild and disheveled. The moment she sees it, terror takes over completely, and she bolts back up the stairs. But just as she reaches to shut the door behind her, the shadowy figure shoves her violently from behind, and she collapses to the floor, unconscious. A short while later, police arrive at the scene after a neighbor's complaint, and they are immediately stunned by the condition of the body. The strangest part of all is that there is absolutely no sign of forced entry anywhere in the house, which makes it nearly impossible to explain how the killer ever got inside in the first place. The male detective handling the case heads straight to the hospital, hoping to question Maddie. But having just lost both her husband and her unborn child, Maddie is in no state to answer anything at all. About 15 days later, when Maddie finally returns home from the hospital, something strange happens once again. She notices the streetlight outside flickering on its own. At that very moment, she spots a man dressed entirely in black approaching from a distance, and the fear comes rushing right back. She bolts inside and locks every single door and window in the house. But just as she heads to do the laundry, an unfamiliar woman's face suddenly appears in the mirror in front of her. In the very next instant, the dark, shadowy figure lunges forward, grabs the woman by the hair, and slams her violently to the ground. At that exact moment, the entire atmosphere of the room shifts in some impossible, otherworldly way, and suddenly Maddie finds herself transported directly into that very same woman's house, with no understanding whatsoever of how she got there. Right in front of her, she watches the man dressed in black grab a trophy and bring it down on the woman's head again and again in a frenzy of violence. Within seconds, Maddie is pulled right back in her own home. Looking around and finding everything perfectly normal, she convinces herself it must have been nothing more than a terrifying nightmare. But she has no idea that what she just witnessed was not a dream at all. It was real. Police quickly arrive at the actual crime scene and discover that the method used to kill both Maddie's husband and this woman is identical, confirming both murders were carried out by the same person. The woman who was killed turns out to be named Glenn, the very doctor who performed Maddie's operation 20 years ago. Her home contains old patient files, which immediately raises suspicion that the killer could be one of her former patients. Acting on that theory, the male detective collects every single file and brings them back to the station to dig through each case carefully. Meanwhile, that night, as Maddie lies down to sleep, she suddenly notices an unfamiliar, overweight man lying right beside her in the bed. The sight sends her into a full-body tremor of pure terror. Her muscles lock up completely, and she cannot move an inch. Then suddenly, the same dark, shadowy figure emerges from behind her and slowly climbs on top of the man. In the next instant, it pulls out a large knife and stabs him repeatedly without pause. The moment the shadow vanishes, Maddie wakes up screaming. Completely shaken by the relentless string of events, she rushes straight to the police station with her sister and tells the male detective absolutely everything. But nobody believes a single word she says. Instead, they treat her like she has lost her mind and start laughing at her. This infuriates her sister, who snaps back that if nothing turns out to be true, they should go ahead and lock both of them up in a psychiatric facility. Hearing this, the male detective finally starts taking things a bit more seriously. Shortly after, Maddie manages to find the overweight man's address online, discovering he lives in the building right across from hers. The male detective then heads there for an investigation along with the female detective. When all four of them arrive, they find a man dead inside his home, exactly as Maddie described. This is the moment the male detective becomes fully convinced that Maddie has genuinely seen the killer with her own eyes. Police then create a sketch based on her description, and the resulting image looks like something straight out of a nightmare, a terrifying, ghostly figure unlike anything human. Seeing this, the female detective once again grows suspicious that Maddie might be fabricating the entire story. Maddie says nothing in response and quietly walks away. During the investigation, the male detective stumbles upon a strange case buried in Dr. Glenn's old files. The patient's name was Emily, a young girl who was only 7 years old at the time. She frequently claimed to see disturbing things and even demonic figures that nobody else could see. To treat her, Dr. Glenn had worked alongside 2 other doctors on a very specific and unusual treatment plan. The shocking discovery is that this same Emily later changed her name and became Maddie. Realizing this, the male detective immediately grows suspicious and pulls up old photographs of all 3 doctors. The moment he sees them, it clicks. 2 of the 3 doctors are already dead, which means the 3rd and final one is the next target. Meanwhile, as Maddie is getting ready at home, she suddenly catches a glimpse of that very last surviving doctor reflected in her mirror, and in the next instant, she is mysteriously transported directly into his house. It does not take long before the male detective arrives at the same location. The moment he opens the door, he finds the doctor lying dead in the bathtub. Maddie, watching from somewhere in that space, tries desperately to warn him, but he can neither see her nor hear her. Suddenly, the same dark figure leaps down from the ceiling and attacks the male detective, knocking him to the ground before fleeing the scene immediately. The male detective chases after it relentlessly and ends up inside an abandoned building, where the creature suddenly drops down from above and launches a brutal, lethal attack. But the male detective is fully trained for situations like this, and he manages to hold the creature back using his firearm. Realizing the tide has turned against it, the creature abandons the fight and quickly scales upward, disappearing from sight. By this point, the male detective is fully convinced that Maddie has some direct connection to all 3 doctors' deaths. Driven by this suspicion, he heads straight to her house, determined to get to the bottom of things. But Maddie has no memory of anything from before the age of 8. Out of pure necessity, the male detective brings in a psychologist to attempt hypnosis, hoping to unlock whatever buried memories might still be inside her. The moment Maddie slips into that hypnotic state, everything comes rushing back with absolute clarity. Before her original operation, the entity attached to the back of her head was something she used to call Gabriel. Gabriel had the power to manipulate her mind and show her terrifying visions of things that were never actually real. But once he was surgically sealed inside her skull after the operation, his control over her diminished significantly. With that control gone, he instead began jumping into other people's bodies to take revenge on the very doctors who had sealed him away. Hearing all of this, the male detective finds the explanation deeply strange and starts to suspect Maddie is hiding something far more sinister. But before he can press her any further, a woman suddenly falls from the ceiling and crashes onto the floor right in front of them. The sight completely shatters Maddie, and everyone else in the room is left stunned and speechless. Up until this point, everyone had assumed Maddie was innocent. But now the truth starts unraveling in a much darker direction. It turns out a woman had been held captive on the roof of Maddie's own house, and that is exactly where police recover the killer's clothing and the murder weapon. Suspicion immediately turns toward Maddie, and she is taken into custody without delay. Maddie insists over and over again that she did not do any of this. That was all Gabriel's doing. Then suddenly the male detective's phone rings with an unknown number. As the conversation unfolds, he realizes he is speaking directly to Gabriel, who admits to having held that woman captive specifically to frame Maddie. But hearing that voice only deepens the male detective's suspicion further. He becomes convinced this is some elaborate scheme cooked up by Maddie herself to clear her own name. Acting on that belief, he makes the decision to formally arrest Maddie and have her thrown into jail. But Maddie's sister still firmly believes in her innocence, and to find the truth, she heads straight to the hospital where Maddie's original operation took place all those years ago. When she arrives, she finds the place completely abandoned, with no sign of any staff or personnel anywhere in sight. Still, she pushes forward, searching every corner until she finally uncovers Maddie's original operation file, which she immediately takes home with her. When she watches the recorded footage from that file, the full and disturbing truth finally comes into focus. The entity attached to the back of Maddie's head had been extraordinarily powerful from the moment it was born. It was not simply capable of showing Maddie frightening illusions. It had the ability to take complete control of her entire body and move it however it wanted, even going so far as to commit murder without the slightest hesitation. This is precisely why the doctors made the decision to permanently seal it within Maddie's skull, a containment that almost entirely neutralized its control over her for 2 decades. But the day Maddie's husband slammed her head against that wall, the impact was enough to jolt Gabriel awake from his long dormancy, and he broke free once again, taking full control of Maddie and using her to commit a string of brutal murders. The moment this truth comes to light, Maddie's sister is shaken to her very core. Meanwhile, inside the jail, a group of thugs decide that Maddie looks weak and start harassing her relentlessly. Alone and utterly defenseless against them, she becomes the target of brutal beatings. But the instant one of them grabs a fistful of her hair, the jail lights begin flickering violently and the atmosphere turns immediately ominous. In the very next moment, the thug's hands are suddenly soaked in blood, and Maddie's body begins convulsing uncontrollably. A horrifying face starts emerging from somewhere deep inside her head. In the blink of an eye, Gabriel has seized complete control of her body once again. The same thugs who had been treating her as an easy target only moments earlier are now the ones in mortal danger. One by one, Gabriel begins tearing through them with brutal, merciless force. Before long, every single thug lies defeated on the floor, and the entire jail cell is soaked in blood. But just as Gabriel is about to finish off the last remaining thug, a guard hears the commotion and opens fire. Gabriel reacts instantly, using the thug's body as a human shield, and under that cover he launches a swift and merciless attack that takes the guard down as well. Around the same time, Maddie's sister rushes to fill the male detective in on everything she has learned about Gabriel. Just then, strange screams begin echoing from inside the police station. The moment the male detective rushes inside, the sight before him stops him cold. Every single inmate and several guards are lying dead on the ground, and Maddie is nowhere to be found. Nobody had any idea that Maddie had already broken through into the evidence room, retrieved a weapon, and unleashed total carnage throughout the station hall. Gabriel methodically takes down officer after officer, maintaining complete and total control over Maddie's body, moving with a relentless and almost mechanical efficiency. His combat skills are so terrifyingly precise that not a single officer can hold their ground against him for more than a few seconds. Right in the middle of this chaos, the male detective arrives and starts shouting Maddie's name desperately trying to pull her back to consciousness. But the harsh truth is that Maddie is still trapped somewhere deep inside her own jail cell, with absolutely no awareness of anything Gabriel has been doing in her body. The instant she catches sight of the male detective standing there armed, a wave of fear convinces her that he must be the real killer behind everything. Overwhelmed by that fear, she abandons any attempt to fight back and regain control. Sensing the opening, Gabriel immediately lunges at the male detective, knocking his weapon clean out of his hands. The female detective tries to intervene and restrain him as well, but she cannot stop him either. Gabriel then breaks free from the jail entirely. The male detective immediately realizes that Gabriel's next target has to be the woman who fell from the roof of Maddie's house, and that he is now heading straight to the hospital to finish her off. Maddie's sister, meanwhile, has already arrived at that same hospital, intending to move the woman to a secure location immediately. But the officers stationed outside have received strict orders to let absolutely no one inside, so they refuse to let Maddie's sister pass as well. Suddenly, the corridor lights begin flickering uncontrollably, and the officer standing guard clutches his chest and collapses to his knees. Maddie's sister, confused and alarmed, rushes forward instinctively to try and help him. But at that exact moment, a violent eruption tears through his chest, and he dies instantly. Terrified, she scrambles backward toward the room and starts slamming the door shut behind her. But Gabriel is already there. With a single powerful kick, he tears the door clean off its frame. The moment he steps inside, he uses his power to violently destroy every electronic device in the room, sending Maddie's sister into a full body tremor of fear. Furious, Gabriel pulls out his knife and advances toward her with murderous intent. While inside, Maddie is screaming at the top of her lungs trying to stop him. At that exact moment, the male detective bursts into the room. Without wasting a single second, he fires 2 shots and wounds Gabriel. Just as he is about to deliver the killing blow, Maddie's sister rushes between them to stop him, a decision that proves devastatingly costly. In the very next instant, Gabriel drives the knife straight into the male detective's chest, and he collapses to the ground immediately. Maddie's sister is now completely alone, facing this threat with no one left to help her. She picks up the discarded firearm but cannot bring herself to fire it, knowing that Gabriel is fully embedded inside Maddie's body, and killing him would mean killing her sister too. So instead she begins desperately calling out Maddie's name, trying everything she can to pull her back to consciousness. But Gabriel has Maddie's body completely and forcefully locked down under his control. Suddenly, he lifts an entire hospital bed and hurls it directly at Maddie's sister, pinning her beneath it. Maddie can see all of this unfolding before her, completely helpless inside her own body, and her sister knows full well that she has no control whatsoever in this moment. Despite the crushing pain, she musters everything she has left for one final desperate attempt to reach her sister. She shouts that Gabriel killed her children, that he is the reason behind every single miscarriage she ever suffered. The moment those words land, everything snaps into sharp focus for Maddie, and a furious, burning rage erupts inside her. She begins fighting with everything she has to regain control of her own body. But before she can succeed, Gabriel turns and shoots her sister. Then he turns back to the bed and finishes off the woman lying there as well. And it is at that precise moment that Maddie's voice begins echoing powerfully inside Gabriel's consciousness. He suddenly feels the world around him shifting in some fundamental way, and the realization hits him hard. Maddie is fully awake now, and she has taken back full control. Snapping back into himself, Gabriel discovers that Maddie's sister is, against all odds, still alive. The confusion overwhelms him completely. He cannot process what just happened. Maddie then makes the truth absolutely clear to him. The very power he has used to control her and bend her to his will for so long is about to be turned directly against him. Seizing the moment, Maddie locks Gabriel down with total and unbreakable force, sealing him inside herself forever. As this happens, the back of her skull begins sealing itself shut on its own, and Gabriel's face slowly fades away into nothing, never to be seen again. Bit by bit, everything around her settles back into normalcy, and life slowly returns to the way it once was. And with that, this incredible story finally comes to a close. Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell icon so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye, take care.